Hello and welcome. I am Light and this is my channel. Before we get started, if you would please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. If you are not subscribed and you would like to be, please do so. And if you would like to be notified when my content goes live, please go ahead and click that bell. But notice that somewhere on your screen, your bell will give you options to be notified always when my content goes up, sometimes when my content goes up, or hardly ever when my content goes up. So please keep clicking until you get the option that you would like. Now, let's get ready for today's story. Alba Roth was just 21 years old when she passed a woman on the sidewalk. The woman, unassuming. One of those women who fade into the background when they become of a certain age. Those people that become nothing more special than a bush or a piece of furniture, noticed simply because it's there or in your way, but indescribable later, or maybe even completely forgotten altogether when one retells a story. They play no real part in anyone's stories anymore, not like they did when they were younger and had dreams and dressed to stand out, to be noticed, to accentuate their hips or their lips or their arms. When they would throw their head back to laugh loudly, not caring who noticed, flipping their hair and making eye contact, standing up in the back seat of their daddy's convertible as a group of friends drive through a crowd, waving and singing to the song on the radio, shaking her hips, the guys acting as if they weren't staring, wishing and yearning. They were smoking, leaning against whatever was handy, nodding their heads, the twinkle in their eyes as the corners of their lips curled upwards, hand in their pocket or around the waist of the girl with the cut-off jean shorts, her shirt tied above her waist, the buttons undone, just one extra button. Her eyeliner drawing attention to her dark eyes, mascara lengthening the lashes so when she looked down just a bit, softly her teeth biting into her dark rose-colored lips, the lipstick designed to draw a man's mind elsewhere, and through the long lashes her eyes flickered with possibilities. This woman was no longer that. This woman was beige, thought Alba, determined that she would rather die than end up like that. Since she had turned 21, she knew that there were no more special birthdays to look forward to. She was on the highway of full-fledged adulthood. She was determined to always turn ahead, to always wear dark lipstick, and to always laugh with her head thrown back. That's when she made eye contact with the woman, and a shock burned right down her spine. She gasped a bit and looked around to make sure that no one had seen her awkward reaction to this woman. Then she turned back, and the woman was still looking at her, right in the eyes, not moving anything, but the skin around her graying blue eyes wrinkled just a bit, and Alba felt fear. "Can I help you?" asked Alba. She just wanted the woman to make some excuse, to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I recognized you," or "Do you know which way to Stratton Street?" But that didn't happen. The woman replied, "Oh, hell." in a low, raspy voice. "I can't believe it, girl." And then she laughed hard. She slapped her knee and looked at Alba again. "Do I know you?" asked Alba, but she sensed by now that she did. She couldn't place how. "Oh, yes, there is a God or something," said the woman in a menacing tone. Alba began to walk the quarter block to her apartment. "See you round, baby girl," scratched the woman, who stood and watched Alba as she was greeted by the doorman. "Good evening, Miss Roth. How was your day?" "Fine, thank you, Roger," she replied out of pure habit. In reality, she was hearing that voice saying, "See you round, baby girl." It made her skin crawl to hear it said like that, the way her stepfather had said it with his heavy southern drawl. The whiskey dragged his words down even further, like they were stuck in some thick brown mud. The rotten smell of his breath with a mix of whiskey and hand-rolled cigarettes. His fingertips yellowed from the tobacco. She could still hear him spit after he rolled one. With a strand of the spit hanging from his lips, he'd wipe it with the back of his arm, brown like rubber from the sun. He'd lived in Mississippi his whole life. He'd grab her by the arm as she walked up the porch. "Hey, little girl, you too good to say hello to your pops?" He'd ask, his eyelids heavy, his glare foggy, but mean. "You ain't my pops," she'd say. It was almost as if it was a game they'd play. Always the same conversation, always the same game. So, I feed you, don't I? Clothe you? Keep this fine roof over your head?" His fingers running along her wrists. "This is my grandparents' home, built by my grandpa the mayor," she'd say, proud that she wasn't his kind. Born on the river, raised in the mud. Her kin had founded this town, built the school and the bank, owned the stockyards and the restaurant. The town square had a statue of her own great-great-grandpa. She came from money. Tom Cutler came out of the dirt. What her mama ever saw in him was a mystery to everyone. Alba's mother had married Alba's daddy right out of university. Daddy had gone to school to be a lawyer, and Mama had gone to study art and catch herself a rich husband. Money marries money, they'd say. But Mama was vivacious and loud. She drank a little too much and was always the center of attention at any party. Daddy sat in a corner, quietly watching her. He loved her deeply, but he told friends that he thought that she might be better suited for someone more of a good old boy type. Daddy wasn't much for rubbing elbows and using his last name to open doors. Mama was all about that. If she could have carried a sandwich board reading "I am Minnie Beth Harris Roth," she would have. She always used the hyphenated last name Harris Roth. Both names with a good long history of upstanding men and women, plus a few rapscallions thrown in to add for colorful stories. Minnie Beth's second cousin, the train robber, stole more money than any train robber in history. That's how the story went. Daddy's great uncle, a poker player, who may or may not have one or two extra children out there somewhere. He carried a rifle and years later Daddy came into possession of it. He cleaned it religiously, and even let Alba shoot it once. Imagine, Alba, this shining silver and dark wood sitting on a table facing you, telling you without a single word that you best not be a cheating man, or Douglas Price would drop you dead where you sat. Alba always tried to imagine that. She would see the twinkle in her daddy's eyes as if he were strangely proud of that type of man. The type of man it takes to have that story passed down generation after generation. Most wishing that he might someday have a colorful story to tell. Daddy died without a story of anything important or exciting. He was sitting in his chair on the porch drinking a lemonade while he watched Mama hiking up her dress, playing in the front yard with Alba and her brother Andrew. Mama was on the swing, head thrown back, her blonde hair sparkling in the sun with its silver, perfectly placed hairs running down her back as she laughed. "Higher, Andy, I want to fly." Daddy called out, "Fly, Minnie Beth, fly, my beautiful bird." She put her head back so far backwards that Alba thought she might fall out of the swing. She winked her eye and she blew him a kiss. She didn't care that Daddy was quiet. She loved that he was the calm to her storm, the steady rock ever watching over her. And then Daddy bent forward, his glass shattering on the white porch. Mama jumped off the swing. Guthrie Roth," she yelled, then called for our housekeeper, June, to get an ambulance, to call 911. 6 months later, a man came to our door. He'd been a client of Daddy's. He wanted to give his condolences, he said. "I'm sorry," started my mother, still beautiful. She would never fade into obscurity, into beige. "I'm not too familiar with who you are." "Tom Cutler, ma'am. People call me Tommy." And I saw something flash in my mother's eyes. Tommy had been in prison for robbery, sexual assault, and suspected of murder in his own granddad. Tommy was just plain bad luck. Tommy told Alba's mama that he'd help around the house, fixing things, taking care of the yard. Tommy poured alcohol into Mama. Well, she certainly didn't fade into beige. She did become a distinct color of gray and yellow, and came home one night, married to Tommy. Tommy strutted around the house like it was his. He beat Andrew, and he prowled upon Alba. Minnie Beth took ill and stayed in bed, head in the sand, living her role as some antebellum Southern belle. Extended family tried helping, to no avail. Minnie wouldn't let the kids live with aunts and uncles. Tommy became more and more aggressive and started giving Mama some sleeping pills to help her sleep. She rarely heard the fighting in the house. She never saw Tommy putting his hands on Alba or punching Andrew. 2 broken ribs, a broken nose. He stopped even telling Mama, and so did Alba. Whenever Alba left the house for work, Tom would always call out, "See you around, baby girl." It made her sick to her stomach. One night, Alba came home late from her summer job. She worked in the family restaurant, and usually Tommy would be drunk, rocking in her daddy's chair, grabbing her wrist. He'd pull her onto his lap, smelling her hair. He'd slowly reach into her apron and take the rolled-up bills that Alba had earned as tips. "I bet you taste real good," he'd growl in that thick accent, her skin crawling. But that night he wasn't on the porch. Alba squinted her eyes to see if he was in the yard. There was nothing. Then she heard it. Andrew yelling through tears. She ran in. "Andrew! Andrew!" she called. "Ah, go to hell," she heard Tommy, slowly, his words thick as she'd expect. She walked into her daddy's office. Andrew punched Tommy square on the nose. Tommy stumbled back and slurred, "You think you're a big man, boy? You wanna play big boy with me, Andy boy?" Tommy was standing up, using the cherry wood and leather chair Daddy sat in at his desk, and he got to his feet. He was so steady that it was confusing to Alba, given the amount he'd probably had to drink. He stood straight, his eyes wild with fury as he looked at Andrew. "I'm gonna whoop your ass, boy, and when you think you'd rather be dead, I'm gonna kill you, you sissy mama's boy." And he walked, heavy-footed, the 3 feet to where Andrew was standing, and he drew his arm back and punched him hard in the face. He grabbed him by the collar as Andy's eyes were rolling in his head. He pulled that arm back again, his fist as hard as concrete, and he slammed it into Andrew's face again as Tommy grunted and laughed, still holding Andrew's collar as he kneed him in the ribs. Andrew was grasping for air. Again, Tommy drew back his arm, the rose tattoo on his bicep pumping with the blood flowing through his veins, blood splattering on Alba's face as the fist drew back. Then, bang! It rang out through the room, and then again, bang! Alba's ears were ringing, her shoulder thrown back so hard that she lost her balance as she held that rifle Daddy cleaned so religiously, and Tommy fell to the ground. By now the housekeeper was screaming, and before she knew it, Alba was sitting in her daddy's rocker, answering questions for the sheriff, a man she'd known her entire life, Bobby Dalton. "You did good, Alba. You saved Andy. You know that piece of... You know he would have made good on his promise to kill Andy. You did good." "You okay, Miss Roth?" asked the doorman, Roger, bringing Alba back to where she was, standing in her lobby. I'm sorry, Roger. I guess I was deep in thought. You need to help me get you into your apartment? Call someone for you?" "No, Roger, thank you," replied Alba as she got into the elevator. As she was reaching her door, she heard a noise like a glass breaking, and then another, and soon her hallway was completely dark. "Hello?" she called out as she quickly tried to get her key into the doorknob. She couldn't see a single thing. She listened intently. Nothing. The key slipped into the doorknob. She opened the door, and from behind, she was shoved into her apartment. She was on the floor, reaching around for her purse. She always carried a gun now. She never got over that feeling of fear. Then a light came on. The room felt almost too bright, and to Alba's surprise, the person who had shoved her into her apartment was that invisible old lady from the street earlier. She sat on Alba's love seat. "Come sit over here, sweetie," she said, patting the cushion. Alba's brain was spinning. What was happening? Who is this woman? Why would she want to hurt or frighten Alba? Alba grabbed her purse. Now, girlie, put that thing back down and do what I have told you to do." Alba sat on the couch and looked into the woman's eyes. Suddenly, her heart felt as though it dropped into her belly, and she jumped back, shaking her head. "It's just not possible," her brain was saying. "Ah, darling," the woman's voice drawled out slowly. "Now, you're a quick one, aren't ya? Always said you was too smart for your own good. Said it would get you in trouble someday, strutting around like you was something special 'cause you come from dirty old money. Money gotten off the backs of poor folk. Wouldn't even pay my pappy what he was worth. Your daddy was a decent man, but still, he was one of ya. Your mama, nothing more than a drunken flirt, running all over town, sharing it all, till she married your daddy. I hated women like her. Women like you. So, what you think, girlie? Look at me now. Some 70-year-old rich bitch had gone blind in a car accident or something. She got my eyes, I guess. My heart, too, maybe. Or maybe she's just an angry old Southern belle, good for nothing but baking cakes and planning events. It was true, Alba thought. These were Tom Cutler's eyes. This was his wretched breath. In this body, I can't love you like I always wanted to. You skipping around in those tight shorts, barely covering what you got, like your mama when she was your age. She ever tell you that my daddy took care of that yard? Huh? Yeah. She'd sneak off to see me. And then when your daddy died and she was suddenly too good to know me. I got her though, didn't I? This woman, laughing like Tom. Alba couldn't think straight. Then the woman, this non-descriptive, impossible to identify even by those she'd walked right past, beige in every way, pulled out a knife and stabbed Alba to death. Then she stood up, gathered herself, walked out of the large building, past the doorman, past the police officers, and right into a crowd where she disappeared. Alba's death, Alba's murder, was never solved.